I have a secret. I can see the aura hovering above people's heads. My dear elder sister, the legitimate daughter, has a phoenix aura. She's about to become the crown princess. That's why she can take my mother's heirlooms with a clear conscience and step on my face while calling me a bastard. My dear stepmother has an aura of wealth. That's why she can smile while forcing me to kneel in the snow, telling me it's all just fate. My father, the Duke of Angwo, has an aura of official rank. That's why he can turn a blind eye to all the suffering I endure. They all say it is fate, but I can see. A black thread is coiled within my sister's phoenix aura. My stepmother's aura of wealth is as thin as paper, and my father's aura of rank is being riddled with holes by a character for rebellion. What they see, however, is the dull gray aura of a loser above my head, but they cannot see that this gray aura of mine is as steady as a rock. They have no idea that these hands of mine, besides doing chores, can occasionally snip a few threads that I find unpleasant. My name is Pei Qingwu, the fourth daughter of the Duke's estate. Though I'm called a daughter, I'm really no different from an errand-running servant. My mother died young. My father doesn't care for me. My stepmother, Lady Chen, and my sister, Pei Yunshu, see me as a thorn in their side. This day, Pei Yunshu summoned me to serve her. As soon as I walked in, I saw the aura above her head. Good heavens, it was quite a sight. A multicolored phoenix, with its wings spread, nearly filling the entire room, glimmering with gold, radiating auspicious light. This is the highest level of prosperous fortune. It's no wonder. In 3 days is the Crown Prince's selection day. She is the front runner. The hope of the entire Duke's residence rests solely on her shoulders. Kneel. Pei Yunshu sat before her vanity, without even lifting her eyes. I obediently knelt down. In front of someone with such soaring fortune, any resistance would be an act of a fool. Besides, my own aura, a dreary, dusty wisp, hovered above my head, like a fart that refused to dissipate. I call this loser luck. Do you know why I called you here? She finally glanced at me through the mirror, her eyes filled with undisguised disgust. I lowered my head. I do not know. Still playing dumb? She sneered, taking a wooden hairpin from her jewelry box. That was the only memento my mother left me. The style was very old, with a lotus flower carved into the head that was nearly worn smooth. This thing isn't worthy of your pathetic mother, and it certainly isn't worthy of you. She toyed with the hairpin in her hand. I'm going to throw it into the latrine so your mother can smell the stench even in the afterlife. My heart skipped a beat. But I didn't look up, and I didn't say a word because I saw it. At the very moment she picked up the hairpin, the golden, radiant phoenix atop her head, at the very tip of its tail feathers, had silently become entwined with a wisp of black aura. The black aura was very thin, like a single strand of hair, but it was purely deeply black, carrying the stench of rot, the scent of finality. It was the aura of death. My eldest sister's good fortune was coming to an end. Why aren't you saying anything? Are you mute? Pei Yunshu, seeing my lack of reaction, grew somewhat impatient. She grew impatient. She stood up, walked over to me, and tilted my chin up with the toe of her shoe. A bastard seed from a concubine, daring to have ambitions. Let me tell you, once I become the crown princess, you'll be the first one I destroy. Her face was very close. I could smell the expensive spices on her, and I could also see, deep in her eyes, that faint gray decay of impending karmic backlash. I calculated in my mind, where is this death aura coming from? I traced that black thread upward with my gaze. The other end of the line was vaguely connected to the world outside the house, pointing toward the direction of the Eastern Palace. So, that's it. Becoming the crown princess is not her fortune, it is her calamity. Sister, I finally spoke, my voice very soft. This hairpin is a keepsake from my mother. It is important to me. She reacted as if she had just heard the greatest joke in the world. Your things. I take them if I want to, and I throw them away if I want to. What exactly do you think you are? She raised her hand, and a slap came flying across my face. It stung with a burning pain. I didn't dodge. Instead, in the moment she struck me, I used my fingernail to quickly scratch a node of her fortune, invisible to even herself. I gave it a light graze. My useless aura allows me to see the fortune of everyone, but it has a small secret. It allows me to, without drawing anyone's attention, I can give someone's fortune a tiny negligible nick. Normally, this nick is completely useless, but if their fortune already has issues, for example, like now, when it is tainted by death energy, that little nick will fester into a deep wound. The death energy will, from there, surge in all the faster. Get lost. After hitting me, she seemed to be in a better mood. She tossed the wooden hairpin to the ground and crushed it under her heel. It is an eyesore. Consider it a reward. I endured the sting on my face, picked up the broken pieces of the hairpin, and retreated in silence. Back in my cold, dilapidated courtyard, I looked at the broken hairpin in my hands. I didn't cry. I simply looked up at the sky, in the direction of the crown prince's palace. That golden dragon aura, which should have soared to the heavens, had already begun to blacken at its core. It looked like a piece of wood eaten away by moths. Pei Yunshu, my dear sister, is it not your wish to be the crown princess? Go ahead then. I shall wait to see how your phoenix crashes and dies against that rotten wooden dragon. In 3 days, you will dig your own grave. The day of the royal consort selection arrived. The entire ducal mansion was decorated with lanterns and streamers, livelier than the Lunar New Year. Pei Yunshu put on the gown sent from the palace for the prospective crown princesses, a vermilion palace dress, embroidered with a soaring phoenix, dazzlingly magnificent. The phoenix aura above her head had also swelled to its peak. The golden light nearly stung my eyes, but that black aura of death had also grown thicker, like a venomous snake. It was coiled tight around the phoenix's neck. She, however, was completely unaware. Her face was full of smug certainty. My stepmother, Lady Chen, held her hands, her eyes filled with pride. Sure, after today, you will be one of the most noble women in all of Great Yan. Don't worry, mother. Pei Yunshu smiled with reserved triumph. Neither of them spared me a glance, because I was currently kneeling in the center of the courtyard. The charge was disturbing the noble aura of the eldest young miss. Lady Chen claimed I was a walking bad omen, fearing I would ruin Pei Yunshu's good fortune. So she had me punished to kneel here. I was forbidden from stepping a single inch outside the courtyard gate. That suits me just fine. Kneeling on the cold stone floor, I could look up and see the overwhelming festivities in the front courtyard, and I could also see, above the Duke's mansion, that the official fortune, once fairly stable, had begun to fracture from being entangled with Pei Yunshu's death-tainted phoenix aura. It was truly, laughably, foolish. The time was drawing near. Surrounded by her maids and matrons, Pei Yunshu prepared to head out and board her carriage. I lowered my head, feigning an appearance of fear, while in reality, my eyes were locked onto an inconspicuous node of energy on her hem. That was one of the foundations of her entire phoenix aura. As long as something went wrong there, the phoenix would become unstable. I was waiting for an opportunity, something carrying a bit of bad luck. And soon, it arrived. A black cat. It emerged from some hidden corner. It was pitch black all over, with only its eyes being emerald green, wrapped in a shroud of faint, decaying energy. It was just a stray cat with bad luck. It was likely drawn by the bustle in the front courtyard, looking for something to eat. This is it. I quietly fished a piece of dried fish out of my sleeve. I had specifically stolen it from the kitchen yesterday. I wrapped the fish in the loser energy that only I can see. Then I flicked my finger. The fish flew in an invisible arc and landed precisely where Pei Yunshu was about to pass. The black cat's eyes lit up instantly. It let out a meow and bolted out like a lightning bolt. Everything happened in a heartbeat. Pei Yunshu was walking forward with graceful poise. The black cat lunged from the side, aiming straight for the piece of dried fish. It was too fast and too sudden. A maid holding a gift box was hit square on. The maid let out a shriek, and the item in her hand slipped away. The box tumbled through the air. The lid flew open. A phoenix coronet, inlaid with pearls and gemstones, fell out. Not a hair off target. It landed right inside a charcoal brazier nearby. There were still burning embers in the brazier. With a crackle, the magnificent feathers and silk tassels on the coronet ignited in an instant. Black smoke billowed up, carrying a foul, burnt stench. The entire scene froze in an instant. Everyone was dumbfounded. Pei Yunshu's face turned pale. The massive phoenix aura above her head shuddered violently. Its neck, entwined with the energy of death, let out a soundless wail. I saw one of its main wing feathers snap. My phoenix coronet. Pei Yunshu was the first to react, letting out a shrill scream. She rushed over like a madwoman, trying to rescue the phoenix coronet from the brazier, but it was already too late. The coronet was scorched beyond recognition, and several of the precious pearls had cracked. Whose cat is that? She was trembling with rage, pointing at the black cat that had already made off with a piece of dried fish, completely hysterical. No one dared to speak. Madame Chen's face darkened completely. Put out the fire now. She barked the command. The maids scrambled to douse it with water, the scene descending into utter chaos. I knelt behind them, head bowed, the corners of my mouth curling upward. What a spectacular show. Just before leaving, the future crown princess's phoenix coronet is ruined. This is no good omen. Pei Yunshu, The road to becoming crown princess, before it has even begun, has already been cast in an indelible shadow. And this is only the beginning. Your good fortune is being devoured bit by bit by that dark tether. I am waiting to see the day the phoenix above your head is completely extinguished. The burning of the phoenix coronet is a grave omen of ill fortune. Pei Yunshu's departure for the palace was delayed just like that. The entire duke's manor was cloaked in a heavy, stifling atmosphere. My father, Duke Pei Qingwu, rushed over upon hearing the news. His face dark enough to drip ink, he cast one look at the charred mess of a coronet, and without a word, raised his hand and struck Madame Chen across the face. Slap. The sound was crisp and sharp. Madame Chen staggered from the blow. She clutched her face, looking at him in disbelief. Master, is this how you manage the household? Pei Qingwu roared. On such an important day, to have such a massive disaster, our Duke of An's estate has been completely disgraced by you. I saw that with that one slap, the fragile aura of wealth above Madame Chen's head shook violently. At the edges, a small crack appeared, and the cloud of official fortune above my father's head dimmed as well. An unstable household is a detriment to the entire family's fate. How wonderful. Dogs, biting dogs, leaving a mess of fur. Master, this was an accident. Madame Chen cried out in defense. A wild cat suddenly rushed out. An accident. Pei Qingwu sneered. I think some people are intentionally making things difficult for our estate. His gaze, like a blade, swept over everyone in the courtyard. Finally, it landed on me. I immediately lowered my head, curled my body into a ball, and trembled with fear. Acting is my specialty. Drag this wretched girl to the ancestral hall. Give her 30 strikes with the rod. He pointed at me and gave the order. No. Before I could speak, Pei Yunshu suddenly spoke up. Her eyes were bloodshot, but it seemed her mind was still intact. Father, today is my big day. It is not a good time for bloodshed. If word gets out that I mistreat my younger sister, my reputation will only suffer more. Pei Qingwu paused, his chest heaving heavily. He knew his daughter was right. Right now, damage control was what mattered most. He let out a heavy scoff. Then have her kneel in the ancestral hall. Without my command, she is not to get up. Yes, I was dragged away toward the ancestral hall. As I passed by Pei Yunshu, she whispered in a voice only we could hear. Pei Qingwu, don't get too full of yourself. When I return from the palace, I will settle this with you. I ignored her. I only glanced above her head. The phoenix's wing had a broken feather, making it unstable when it tried to fly. She wants to be the crown princess. In her dreams, the ancestral hall was cold. I knelt on the prayer mat, listening to the commotion outside. Madame Chen had used her family connections, urgently sourcing a new phoenix crown and robe from the Palace Bureau of Attire. Although not as grand as the original set, it was passable enough. The hour was already late. Pei Yunshu's carriage rushed hurriedly toward the palace. I closed my eyes and could easily imagine how disheveled she must look right now. By evening, an old servant brought me some food, a bowl of thin porridge, and 2 rock-hard steamed buns. Fourth young miss, eat. These are the mistress's orders. I didn't move. I looked at this old woman. She was Lady Chen's personal maid, the most malicious of them all. The aura above her head was a murky gray, stained with countless black spots, signs of the many evil deeds that had depleted her virtue. Does the mistress have any other orders? I asked softly. The old woman grinned, revealing a mouthful of yellow teeth. The mistress says, fourth young miss, your fortune is fragile, and your destiny is ill-omened. You've clashed with the eldest Mrs. Nobility. If the eldest miss fails to be chosen as crown princess, it will be because you cursed her. I sneered to myself. There it is. I knew they would shift the blame onto me. This narrative had been prepared long ago. Regardless of whether Pei Yunshu is chosen or not, the label of me being a jinx is unavoidable. If she is chosen, then I stood in her way and must be eliminated. If she isn't chosen, then I cursed her, and I deserve to be crushed even more. Lady Chen's scheme is truly cunning. Unfortunately, she miscalculated. One thing, she thinks I am still that pushover she can manipulate at will. I understand. I picked up the porridge and took a sip. The porridge was cold. In my heart, I quietly watched Lady Chen's precarious aura of wealth. So, you want to use me as your scapegoat? Fine. Then I shall let everyone in the capital see who exactly is cursing whom. I knelt in the ancestral hall for 2 days. On the 3rd day, news arrived from the palace. Pei Yunshu was named a secondary consort to the crown prince, not the primary consort, merely a secondary one. When the news spread, the atmosphere in the duke's mansion instantly dropped to freezing point. What was thought to be the guaranteed position of crown princess ended up being only a secondary consort. It was an absolute mockery. My father, Pei Qingwu, smashed his favorite set of porcelain in his study on the spot. I could see it. The aura of rank and fortune above the duke's mansion suddenly collapsed in one corner, like a balloon that had been pricked. Madame Chen's expression was even more ghastly than if her own father had died. The aura of wealth above her head was now reduced to a thin layer of golden light, with churning black and gray underneath. It's over. She is finished. And the duke's mansion is nearing its end too. I was released from the ancestral hall. Get out here. I was immediately summoned to Madame Chen's courtyard. She sat in the seat of honor, with Pei Yunshu beside her, her eyes swollen like walnuts. She had clearly been crying. Kneel. Upon seeing me, Madame Chen grabbed the teacup from the table and hurled it at me. I tilted my head to dodge it, and the cup shattered to pieces beside my feet. You jinx. You bringer of misfortune. Madame Chen pointed at me, screaming at the top of her lungs. It was all you. It is all because of you, you wretch. That sure lost the position of crown princess. Pei Yunshu glared at me with venomous eyes as well. Mother, why bother talking to her? Drag her out and beat her to death. To accompany me in the afterlife. She actually used the word accompany in death. It seems that being named only a secondary consort was to her no different from dying. I knelt on the ground, feeling perfectly calm inside. I looked at the aura of fortune above their heads. Pei Yunshu's phoenix was now the size of a molting chicken. And it was crooked too. That black thread of deathly energy had completely merged into its body beyond saving. What? Do you think you're in the right? Seeing me silent, Madame Chen became even more furious. You unfilial wretch. You bring misfortune to your father, your mother, and your sisters. How could our PA family have produced a curse like you? I raised my head and looked at her. Madam, I said slowly, is it really because of me that the eldest daughter didn't become the crown princess? Who else would it be but you? On the day of the selection, the phoenix crown burned, which was indeed a bad omen. But that was just an accident caused by a cat. I paused, then continued. I heard that the reason His Highness the Crown Prince didn't choose the eldest sister as his primary consort was because the eldest sister behaved unseemly before him. You're lying. Pei Yunshu shrieked. I am not lying. I looked at her, my expression calm. I heard that the eldest sister was rushed for time, and in her anxiety, when she was paying her respects to the Empress, she accidentally stepped on her own hem and fell. Is that so? Pei Yunshu's face turned as purple as a pig's liver in an instant. This incident was her greatest humiliation. The household had kept it strictly under wraps. How did I know? Of course I knew. I saw that phoenix of hers with the broken wing, limping as it tried to fly, and I knew she was bound for trouble. Tripping while walking was the least of it. You, how do you know that? Madame Chen froze as well, her voice trembling slightly. If you don't want people to know, you shouldn't have done it in the first place. I said softly, Madam, the eldest miss just had bad luck. She took a fall and lost her chance to be the crown princess. How? Can you blame that on me? You. Madame Chen was too furious to speak. Furthermore, I changed my tone, looking her in the eye. I heard that, to replace the eldest Miss's damaged gown, you used your brother's connections at court and forcibly commandeered one from the Bureau of Palace Attire. In doing so, you offended Consort D in the palace. Madame Chen's complexion drained completely white. Consort Des was another top contender for the crown princess position. She was the aunt of the Minister of Personnel's daughter. By pulling such a stunt, she had thoroughly offended Consort Des. The Minister of Personnel's influence at court was no less than my own father's. You, what exactly are you trying to say? Madame Chen's voice carried a hint of fear. I watched her aura of prosperity fading away and smiled. I don't mean to say anything. I just think that a person's fate is something they bring upon themselves. You can't blame anyone else. After I finished speaking, I kowtowed. If you, madame, insist that I am the one who cursed her, then just beat me to death. But if you beat me to death, can the eldest young lady still become the crown princess? Can the duke's mansion return to the way it was? My words were like a hammer, striking hard at their hearts. That's right. Beating me to death would be useless. What is done is done. Pei Yunshu's position as crown princess is already gone. The duke's mansion has offended consort Des, and its future is uncertain. In all of this, what would killing a daughter of a concubine really change? Madame Chen slumped into her chair, silent for a long time. Pei Yunshu looked at me, her expression complex. There was resentment, unwillingness to yield, and a trace even she didn't realize of dread. They were finally afraid of me, and so they should be. A dog that only knows how to fawn and beg does not live long, but a jinx who can strike at your deepest pain. A jinx that makes you feel fear. Before you make a move against her, you have to think twice. I know, I am safe for now, but that is not enough. What I want is for them to be utterly ruined. Pei Yunshu entered the palace after all, bearing the awkward title of Crown Prince's concubine. She was carried into the East Palace through a side gate in a small sedan chair. There wasn't even a proper wedding ceremony. On the day she left, I saw it. The already withered aura of fortune above the Duke's estate was torn open once again. It was being absorbed into the massive, yet internally decaying dragon aura of the East Palace. The Duke's estate was being bled dry, and this was just the beginning. Pei Yunshu's life in the palace was not easy. The Crown Prince Li Chengzi was already fuming because he hadn't been able to marry his preferred candidate, Consort Die's niece. Now that he had been forced to marry the ill-omened Pei Yunshu, he never showed her a pleasant face. On their wedding night, the Crown Prince stayed with one of his other concubines. By the next day, Pei Yunshu had become the laughingstock of the entire East Palace. I heard all of this news from the idle gossip of the household servants. Whenever they spoke of the eldest Mrs. Plight in the palace, their tone was filled with malicious glee. That is human nature for you. When you are high and mighty, everyone fawns over you. But once you fall, everyone wants to kick you while you're down. My daily chores consisted of sweeping the courtyard and watering the plants. Madame Chen was likely truly afraid of me by now, as she no longer came to cause me trouble. The atmosphere in the house grew more oppressive by the day. My father was being targeted everywhere at court by the faction of the Minister of Personnel. Several important positions were all snatched away by others. He would come home and drink, then he'd lose his temper at Madame Chen. The sound of the couple's arguments could be heard halfway across the courtyard. I watched the fortunes above their heads fading day by day. The aura of wealth around Madame Chen was barely visible anymore, leaving behind only a dull, decaying hue. My father's career prospects had transformed from a grand, imposing mansion into a crumbling, dilapidated hut. And that good-for-nothing aura of mine, it was still a dull gray blob, but it was steady. No matter how fierce the storm outside, it remained unmoved. On a beautiful, clear afternoon, summoning from the palace arrived suddenly. It was the head eunuch from the Empress's side, specifically asking to see me. My heart skipped a beat, but I kept my expression composed. What is meant to come will eventually come. I was taken to the main hall. My father and Madame Chen were both there, looking grim. The head eunuch sat in a chair, sipping tea, and said in a shrill voice, "Duke of Angwo, the consort is in the palace, and she is ill." Madame Chen stood up at once. "What is wrong with Shure? The consort misses her family. She has no appetite for food or tea, and is wasting away day by day. Her Majesty the Empress is merciful, and suggested sending a sister from the manor to keep her company. Perhaps she will recover then." The head eunuch's eyes swept over me as if I were a piece of merchandise. "I think this fourth young lady will do just fine." The expressions on my father and Madame Chen's faces changed instantly. They both understood. This was nothing good. What kind of place is the palace? A place that devours people whole. Pei Yunshu herself is already in such a state. Sending me in there is not for companionship. It's sending me to be her punching bag, to be her scapegoat. My father hesitated. No matter how unloved I am still his daughter. Sending me into the Eastern Palace, that den of wolves, my fate would be uncertain. Why? Does the Duke have an objection? The head eunuch smiled insincerely. This is a grace bestowed by Her Majesty the Empress. My father's forehead broke out in cold sweat. He dared not offend the Empress. As I looked at the crumbling thatched hut above his head, my heart turned icy cold. I knew he would abandon me. Sure enough, after a moment of struggle, he gritted his teeth. "I leave the decision entirely to you, eunuch." On Madame Chen's face, a smirk of satisfaction appeared. The way she looked at me was like looking at a dead person. "Very well," I thought to myself. "Don't you all think the Eastern Palace is a dragon's den? Don't you want to send me in there to die? Then I will go in and show you. I'd like to see whether that rotten wooden dragon in the Eastern Palace is tougher, or if I, this jinx who can sever threads of fate, am tougher." Going to the Eastern Palace suits me perfectly, because The roots of the Duke's estate, that decaying tree, are right there. I will pull them out. I will pull it out by the root. If you cut the grass, you must pull out the roots. The Eastern Palace is even more suffocating than I imagined. The pavilions and terraces, the carved beams and painted pillars. It all looks magnificent on the outside, but in my eyes, the entire Eastern Palace is shrouded in a layer of visible dark energy. That golden dragon of fate belonging to the crown prince has now turned a blackish gold, covered in cracks, gasping its final breath. This place, its fortune is exhausted. I was taken to Pei Yunshu's residence, a secluded little courtyard called Wanzhou Pavilion. The name alone sounds ominous. The courtyard is cold and desolate, with only a young maid and an old nanny. As soon as I stepped inside, I saw Pei Yunshu. She has grown gaunt and unrecognizable, dressed in plain, simple robes, sitting by the window in a daze, the mangy chicken above her head. Oh, excuse me. The phoenix aura is now so small it is almost invisible, yet the black line of death on her is thick as a rope. So you've come. Upon seeing me, there is no joy of sisters reuniting in her eyes, only numbness and spite. By the decree of the Empress, I am here to keep you company, sister. I bow properly. Company. She sneers. You're just here to watch me make a fool of myself, aren't you? She stands up and walks to me. Pei Qingwu, that I have become what I am today, is all you're doing. She raises her hand to strike me. I didn't dodge. I just said softly, sister, why does your face look so pale as paper? Her hand froze in midair. She touched her face subconsciously. No woman doesn't care about her appearance. Have you been having nightmares lately? Unable to sleep soundly, I continue to ask. Her pupils constricted. How did you know? I also know, sister, that you've been feeling lightheaded, losing your appetite, and getting unexplained bruises. Haven't you? These are all symptoms of being eroded by deathly energy. Pei Yunshu's complexion changed completely. The look in her eyes, from spiteful, turned to terror. You, who on earth are you? I'm your sister. I smiled and helped her sit down. Sister, you weren't harmed by others. You were possessed by an evil spirit. I was spouting nonsense. But when dealing with someone with a guilty conscience, this trick works best. An evil spirit? Pei Yunshu's voice trembled with fear. Yes, I nodded, glancing around theatrically. Sister, this courtyard of yours is too heavy with yin energy. The yang energy in your body is being drained away little by little. I pointed to a bronze mirror on her vanity. The mirror, in particular, is the biggest problem. That mirror was a gift from the crown prince. It was entangled with a wisp of the crown prince's black gold dragon aura. It was precisely this aura that was accelerating the draining of her life fortune. To compensate for the crown prince's own deficits, the crown prince was using her as a shield to extend his own life. Of course, I couldn't exactly say that outright. What is wrong with this mirror? Pei Yunshu asked nervously. This mirror can reflect unclean things. Sister, if you look into it every day, your soul will be sucked away. I lowered my voice, making it sound mysterious and dire. Pei Yunshu screamed in terror and shoved the mirror to the floor with a crash. The bronze mirror hit the ground, and on its surface, it reflected her terrified face. I saw that the wisp of black gold dragon aura between her and the mirror had snapped. The phoenix above her head, which was about to vanish, had actually stabilized a little. Although it still looked like a mangy chicken, at least she wasn't going to die just yet. Pei Yunshu was panting heavily, looking as if she had just been dragged out of the water. The way she looked at me had completely changed, from terror to dependence. Qingwu, save me. You must save me. She clutched my hand, as if I were her last lifeline. I sneered inwardly. Save you? I just don't want you to die so soon. If you die, the crown prince will just find another victim to drain. What I want is not for you to die. What I want is for the crown prince and you and the entire duke's household to be ruined together. You, as a pawn, still have your uses. Don't be afraid, sister. I patted her hand, my face full of sincerity. With me here, I won't let anything happen to you. From that day on, my standing in the eastern palaces underwent a subtle change. Pei Yunshu became completely obedient to me. She said I was her only source of support. I told her to tuck away the gifts from the crown prince, and she tucked them away. I told her to bathe in mugwort water every day, and she bathed in it. Her complexion actually did get a little better, and I also took advantage of her trust to start within the eastern palace. Quietly, setting my trap. I know that black gold dragon the prince possesses hides a massive secret. I am going to dig it out, and the breakthrough lies with the one ignored by the crown prince, yet favored by the empress, the crown princess. The crown princess's surname is Wang, and she is the empress's own niece. She is a very quiet woman. She spends her days in her own courtyard, chanting scriptures and praying, and staying out of worldly affairs. In the crown prince's palace, she was like an invisible person. The crown prince didn't touch her, and the servants looked down on her. But everyone knew that as long as the empress was alive, her position as crown princess was as solid as a mountain. I first met her in the imperial garden. She was sitting in a pavilion, twirling a string of prayer beads in her hand. I saw the aura above her head. It was strange, a golden lotus flower. The lotus is a Buddhist symbol, representing purity and serenity, but this golden lotus was enveloped in a dense mass of black mist. Within that black mist, I could even see countless faces of people suffering and struggling. This is resentment, monstrous resentment. How could a crown princess who lived a life of prayer and fasting have such heavy resentment clinging to her? This matter was definitely not simple. I found an opportunity, under the guise of delivering something to Pei Yunshu, to approach the crown princess's residence. Her courtyard was not heavily guarded. I slipped inside easily. In the courtyard, there was a small Buddhist shrine. The source of the resentment was right inside. I hid outside the window, peering inside quietly. Inside the shrine, incense smoke curled in the air. The crown princess was kneeling on a mat, her back turned to me, muttering under her breath. On the altar before her, there was no statue of a Buddha, but rather a black wooden tablet. There were no characters on it. It was a nameless memorial tablet. My heart skipped a beat. Who is this tablet dedicated to? I held my breath and focused my meager spiritual energy into my eyes. In an instant, the world before me changed. The swirling incense smoke in the prayer room transformed into gray-black resentment. Wisps and threads of it were all coiling into that nameless tablet. Meanwhile, the golden lotus above the crown princess's head was constantly emitting a golden glow, purifying this resentment. But there was so much of it. The golden lotus was already struggling to hold on. Its light flickered unsteadily. I understood now. The crown princess wasn't chanting sutras. She was suppressing it, using her own life force to suppress the monstrous resentment in that tablet. But where did this resentment come from? Just then, the crown princess seemed to sense something and whipped her head around. I quickly pulled back, hiding against the corner of the wall, my heart pounding wildly. After a moment, there was no sound. I cautiously peeked out again. She had already stood up and walked to the altar, covering that nameless tablet with a piece of black cloth. Then, she turned around and walked out of the prayer room. I saw her face. It was deathly pale, without a drop of blood in her eyes. There was a sorrow that wouldn't fade, and hatred. A bold theory began to form in my mind. This spirit tablet is connected to the crown prince, and connected to the dragon's aura that was hollowed out from the Eastern Palace. This is the true secret of the Eastern Palace, and also the key to bringing down the crown prince. I must find a way to learn what is really hidden behind that tablet, but I cannot force it. The crown princess may look fragile, but the golden lotus above her head contains immense Buddhist power. If I break in, I will suffer the backlash. I need an opportunity. An opportunity to make the crown princess reveal the secret herself. I looked at the sky. It is time to go and offer some guidance to my dear sister once again. I returned to Wanzhou Pavilion. Pei Yunshu was throwing a tantrum, shattering porcelain all over the floor. How dare he treat me like this? How dare he? Her eyes were red, as if she were possessed. No need to ask. She must have been angered by the crown prince again. Sister, calm yourself. I walked over and steadied her. Calm myself. How can I calm myself? She shoved me away. That wretched woman. The crown prince actually hit me for her. The wretched woman she spoke of was a new dancing girl favored by the Eastern Palace. The crown prince is bewitched by that hussy. I only said a few words about her, and the crown prince slapped me. Pei Yunshu clutched her face, sobbing until she was gasping for air. Qingwu, what should I do now? I cannot stay in this place for even one more day. I looked at her, feeling nothing at all inside. If only you had known today would come, you wouldn't have acted as you did back then. Sister, I said slowly, have you ever wondered why the crown prince would suddenly favor a dancing girl so much? Why? Isn't it just because she knows how to seduce men? No, I shook my head. It is because she brings good fortune to the crown prince. Pei Yunshu was stunned. What do you mean? That dancing girl, I have seen her. The aura above her head is a cluster of pink peach blossoms. This kind of aura is lethally attractive to men and can even boost a man's windfall luck. Of course, I was making it up. That dancing girl's aura was perfectly ordinary, but I know. The Crown Prince has been running an illegal gambling den recently. His luck has been terrible, and he has lost quite a lot of money. At a time like this, a woman who can boost his fortune appears, so naturally he will treat her like a treasure. Then, what about me? Pei Yunshu asked nervously. What about you, sister? I sighed. The phoenix above your head is an aura of prosperity and wealth, but the Crown Prince right now is walking a twisted path. Your luck, he has no use for it. Instead, he only finds you to be a nuisance. What I said, a mix of truth and lies. But for someone like Pei Yunshu, who has lost all reason, it was enough. She believed it. Then, what should I do? I cannot just lose to a mere dancer like that. If you want to win back, there is only one way. I looked into her eyes and said word by word, conceive a royal heir. Pei Yunshu's eyes lit up instantly. That is right. A child brings status to the mother. As long as she could bear the Crown Prince's child, never mind a dancer. Even the Crown Princess would be beneath her notice. But the Crown Prince, he never comes to my quarters. She lost heart again. He will come. I reached into my sleeve and took out a small paper packet. What is this? A bit of incense to set the mood. Put it in your incense burner. Once the Crown Prince smells it, he will naturally. I didn't finish my sentence, but she understood. Her face flushed red and then pale. In the end, she snatched it away. Once this succeeds, I will not treat you poorly. I smiled and said nothing. The plan went smoothly. The Crown Prince fell for it just as expected. 3 days later, in Pei Yunshu's courtyard, happy news was spread. She was pregnant. Once the news broke, the East Palace was in an uproar. My father and the Chen woman at home also breathed a great sigh of relief. The fortune of the Duke's estate seemed to have recovered just a little because of this. Everyone thought that Pei Yunshu was about to turn things around. Only I knew that this was a death warrant for her, because what I gave her wasn't some aphrodisiac spice at all. It was the pollen of a rare flower from the western regions, colorless and odorless. It can cloud a person's mind, but more importantly, it has a unique property. If a pregnant woman smells it, nothing will happen. But if someone who is using their own energy to suppress evil spirits smells it, the consequences would be unimaginable. My target, from the very beginning, was the Crown Princess. The news of Pei Yunshu's pregnancy would certainly reach her ears. A Crown Princess who spends her days praying to Buddha and avoids worldly conflicts. Could she tolerate a concubine getting ahead of her to conceive the firstborn son? The answer is no. 3 nights later, a dark figure quietly snuck into the small kitchen of the Wanzhou Pavilion. From the shadows, I saw it clearly. It was the nanny most trusted by the Crown Princess. She added a packet of something into Pei Yunshu's prenatal medicine. I did not stop her. Early the next morning, from Wanzhou Pavilion, came the sound of Pei Yunshu's heart-wrenching screams. She had miscarried. Blood stained her bed sheets red. It was her. That wretch, Madame Wang, is the one who harmed me. Pei Yunshu was like a madwoman, intent on risking her life to confront the Crown Princess. I held her back. Sister, if you go now, without any proof, they will only accuse you of slandering the mistress of the palace, adding to your crimes. Then did my child die for nothing? Of course not. I looked at her, my eyes ice cold. Since she harmed your child, we will make her use the entire Eastern Palace to accompany you in mourning. Pei Yunshu's miscarriage caused quite a stir. The Crown Prince came to take a look. His face devoid of emotion, he simply left behind a get well soon and walked away. The Empress, however, sent over plenty of tonics. She even had the old nurse who poisoned the medicine arrested and beaten to death. On the surface, it was meant to give Pei Yunshu some closure, but everyone knew perfectly well that this whole affair was inseparable from the Crown Princess. Yet with no evidence and the Empress protecting her, no one could touch her. Pei Yunshu lay on the bed, looking ashen. Her child was gone, and her final hope had vanished with it. The mangy chicken hovering above her head now only had a single breath left, ready to dissipate at any moment. Qingwu. She gripped my hand, her voice faint as a thread. I hate them so much. Sister, I will help you take your revenge. I leaned into her ear. I whispered a plan to her. As she listened, in her eyes, a glimmer of light finally returned. It was the flame of revenge. A few days later, there was a grand sacrificial ceremony at the palace. The entire Eastern Palace was required to attend. I supported the frail Pei Yunshu and joined the procession. The Crown Prince and the Crown Princess princess walked at the very front. I looked at the golden lotus wrapped in resentment above the crown princess's head and knew the time had come. The sacrificial ceremony had tedious procedures. By the time it was halfway through, everyone was becoming weary. Just then, Pei Yunshu suddenly groaned, clutching her stomach, her face deathly pale. My stomach hurts. Her body went limp, and she began to collapse to the ground. I hurriedly caught her. Consort. The people around us gasped in shock. The crown prince turned back, frowning impatiently. What is going on? Your Highness, my lady. She must have seen something unclean and was frightened, I said, while fearfully pointing toward the crown princess. Everyone's gaze followed my finger to look at the crown princess. The crown princess's face also paled. How dare you spout nonsense? I am not spouting nonsense, I said with a sobbing voice. I just saw it with my own eyes. I saw right behind the crown princess a blood-covered infant following her. Boom, my words were like a thunderclap, and everyone present gasped in terror. A blood infant. This is a terrible omen. Nonsense. The Empress barked harshly. Guards, drag this girl away for spreading such evil lies. Your Majesty, have mercy. Everything I said is true. I threw myself to the ground, crying out, that infant is crying and screaming. Give me back my life. My voice was shrill and piercing, and layered with Pei Yunshu's pained groans. The scene turned utterly macabre. The faces of the Emperor and Empresses turned ghastly pale. At a sacrificial ceremony, having such a thing occur was a disaster of monumental proportions. What else did you see? It was the Emperor who spoke. His gaze was sharp, drilling into me, as if trying to see if I truly witnessed it, or was just playing tricks. Though I was calm as a mountain inside, I trembled even more violently on the outside. I also saw that blood infant climb out. It climbed out of the crown princess's sleeve. It said that the spirit tablets in the shrine can no longer suppress it. As I finished these words, the crown princess's body swayed abruptly, and the golden lotus above her head, the light went chaotic in an instant. The black mist enveloping it seemed to boil, churning frantically. I saw those countless tormented faces, as if trying to burst out from the mist. The crown princess had lost her composure. She could no longer suppress that resentment. The Buddha Hall. What tablet? The Emperor caught the keyword sharply. The crown prince's face went drained of color. Father, this girl is insane. Her words cannot be trusted. He was panicked. The more panicked he became, it only meant that I was right. In the Buddha Hall, there really is a spirit. Search. The Emperor ignored him and coldly spat out the single word. The Imperial Guard immediately rushed toward the Eastern Palace. The Crown Prince tried to stop them, but was stared down by the Emperor. In less than the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, the Imperial Guard returned. The commanding general held something in his hands. It was exactly that, covered in a black cloth. Blank spirit tablet. The moment the tablet appeared, the entire altar seemed to drop in temperature. A chilling presence began to spread. The crown princess let out a cry and vomited a mouthful of black blood. The golden lotus above her head was completely swallowed by the resentment. It is over. She is finished as well. The emperor stepped forward and tore the black cloth off the spirit tablet. The tablet was empty, but everyone could feel that it was imbued with a malevolent grudge that made the very soul tremble. Li Cheng's. The emperor whipped around, staring intensely at the crown prince, and asked word by word, "Tell us, sir, what in the world is going on here?" The crown prince's legs gave way. He fell with a thud, crashing to the floor. The battered wooden dragon above his head let out a mournful wail. Cracks instantly covered its entire body. I knew the world of the Eastern Palaces was about to collapse. The emperor ordered the Eastern Palace sealed. Everyone involved was brought to the main hall for overnight interrogation. Pei Yunshu and I, as victims and witnesses, were taken there as well. The truth soon came to light, and it was even filthier and more horrific than I had imagined. That blank spirit tablet was not dedicated to a single person, but to the vengeful spirits of 999 infants. Crown Prince Li Chengzi was sickly by birth, with a flawed destiny. A Taoist priest gave him an idea, claiming that with a secret ritual, he could kill 1,000 infants born in the yin year month and day, harvest their souls, and refine them into the 1,000 infant elixir. Once consumed, he could defy the heavens and change his fate, immune to all illnesses, and even attaining immortality. Thus, over the past decade, the crown prince and those behind him, namely the empress and her maternal clan, the Wang family, have been secretly carrying out this inhumane plan. They kidnapped, trafficked, bought, and even outright abducted infants who met their criteria. They had already killed 999. They were just one away. Crown Princess Wang. The reason she turned to Buddhism was that she had accidentally discovered this secret. She was kind-hearted, unable to bear it, yet powerless to oppose her own family and husband. She could only use her spiritual merit and fortune to suppress the resentment of those infants, hoping to ease their grievances. But she failed. The resentment was too great, beyond what she could possibly contain. And I simply gave it a push at the most critical moment so that this festering sore would finally burst in the grand hall with the evidence indisputable. Crown Prince Li Chen's Empress Wang and all the Wang family members involved collapsed to the ground, their faces deathly pale. My father, the Duke of Angwo, as an in-law, was also implicated. He knelt below, shaking like a leaf in the wind. The shack representing his fate above him had already half collapsed. The emperor sat on the throne, his face ashen, not saying a word, but everyone could feel the silence before the storm. His most prideful son, his most trusted wife, had actually behind his back committed such heinous, abominable acts. This was no longer just a simple rivalry between princes. This was a world-shaking scandal that threatened the very foundation of the nation. Pei Qingwu, the emperor finally spoke, his voice hoarse. My father gave a start and kowtowed violently. Your Majesty, I am wronged. I had no knowledge whatsoever of this matter. Is that so? The emperor sneered. Your daughter is the crown prince's concubine. Do you dare claim you didn't hear even a whisper of this? My father was struck dumb. Your Duke of Angwo estate has enjoyed decades of wealth and glory, and now that trouble has come, you wish to wash your hands of it. The emperor's voice grew colder by the second. It seems to me that your time as duke has come to an end. My father slumped down. The thatched hut above his head crumbled in an instant, turning into dust. His aura of nobility was completely gone. Immediately following, the emperor's gaze turned to Pei Yunshu. You, as the crown prince's concubine, did you know? Pei Yunshu trembled uncontrollably, shaking her head desperately. Your Highness, I knew nothing of this. I am a victim as well, Your Majesty. Your Majesty, my child was killed by the Wang woman. She still hoped to elicit pity. Regrettably, in the face of 999 infant lives, her petty grievances meant absolutely nothing. The emperor ignored her entirely. He stood up and step by step walked toward the crown prince. You wicked son. He raised his foot, kicking the crown prince squarely in the chest. How could you face anyone? How can you face our ancestors? How can you face the people of this empire? The emperor kicked him again and again. The crown prince, like a dead dog, cowered on the floor, not daring to make a sound. The black dragon above his head shattered completely. It turned into a wisp of black smoke and dissipated into the air. His destiny was at an end. Hear my decree. The emperor's voice echoed throughout the great hall, laden with exhaustion and murderous intent. Crown Prince Li Chengzi is stripped of his status as a commoner and confined for life. Empress Wang is granted a length of white silk to keep her corpse intact. The entire Wang clan, all who participated in this matter, shall be executed to the last member. Duke of Angwo Pei Qingwu, for failing to discipline his daughter and for his failure in judgment, is stripped of his title, his assets confiscated, demoted to a commoner, and barred from public service forever. Each of these imperial edicts, like blades cutting through the air, handing down a death sentence to them all. I knelt below, my head bowed, watching as the once haughty duke's estate was just like that, finished. Inside me, there was not a shred of joy, only a vast calm. Good and evil will have their due in the end. Your retribution has arrived. On the day the duke's estate was raided, a heavy snow fell upon the capital. Imperial guards stormed the gates, confiscating property, making arrests. Cries of agony and desperate pleas filled the air in a deafening chorus. My father, Pei Qingwu, had turned completely white-haired overnight, looking like a truly broken old man. Lady Chen had lost her mind, clutching a pile of useless jewelry. Alternating between laughter and tears, Pei Yunshu was sent back from the palace, her gaze hollow, like a wooden puppet. Everything they had once inflicted upon me was now 100 or 1,000 times over, visited back upon them. And I, amidst the chaos, changed into the most nondescript rough-spun clothes, shouldering the small bundle I had long prepared. Inside it were all the silver notes and jewelry I had quietly saved up over these years. This money had been earned by using my ability to see fate, dabbling in small business ventures on the side. For instance, telling a merchant which of his shipments held the best fortune and would yield a profit, or for example, warn a gambler that their luck with windfall wealth is poor today and to stay away from the table. No one knew that the mysterious little god of wealth in the capital was me, the jinx of the Duke's estate. I walked to the back gate. The guards at the entrance were all drawn away by the commotion in the front courtyard. There was no one here. I took one last look back at the place where I had lived for over a decade, the place that had brought me endless suffering and humiliation. At this moment, it was shrouded in a gray, decaying aura. I saw Pei Yunshu being dragged out by two rough guards. She saw me. Across the heavy, swirling snow, she looked at me. In her eyes, the resentment was gone, leaving only a kind of indescribable sense of relief, or perhaps regret. She seemed to have realized something, but it was too late. I gave her a slight smile, and then turned around, and without looking back, walked into the wind and snow, the bustle of the capital. The grievances of the Duke's estate were no longer any concern of mine. I was going to Jiangnian to buy a small house, open a little shop, and live my own life. From this day on, the sky is high and the seas are wide, and I am free to roam. I, Pei Qingwu, am finally free. 3 years later, Jiangnian, Suzhou, in a quiet, secluded alleyway, a small spice shop opened for business. The owner of the shop is surnamed Pei. She is a very young woman. She doesn't smile often, but she is very kind to others. The spices in the shop have a very unique scent. They say it has a calming and soothing effect. Busyness is quite good. This shop owner is none other than me. With the money I brought with me, I made a home for myself in Suzhou. Life is peaceful and secure. I rarely look at other people's fortunes anymore. Seeing too much is exhausting. Occasionally, I still hear some news from the capital. I heard the deposed Crown Prince Li Chengze passed away from illness while under house arrest. I heard the entire Duke of Angguo family was exiled to the harshest, coldest frontier. Within a few years, they were all dead. I heard the new Crown Prince is benevolent and deeply loved by the people. The Great Yan is peaceful and prosperous. All of this has nothing to do with me anymore. This afternoon, there were no customers in the shop. I sat behind the counter, dozing off. A young man in a blue cloth robe walked in. He looked very plain, but his presence was clean and serene. I looked up and took a look out of habit. Then I froze. I couldn't see his fortune. Above his head, completely empty. This is a situation I have never seen before. Either he is a celestial being descended to earth beyond the 5 elements, or he is simply a dead man, proprietus. He began. His voice was very gentle. I have been searching for you for a long time. My heart tightened. I kept my composure. Sir, are you looking to buy spices? No. He shook his head and offered a smile. I came because I have a question for you. He reached into his sleeve and took something out, placing it on the counter. It was a broken wooden hairpin. The top of the hairpin was a lotus flower worn almost smooth. It was my mother's keepsake. It was something I personally put away and buried under the old locust tree in the backyard of the Duke's mansion. How could he have it? 3 years ago, the Duke's mansion fell and the Crown Prince was deposed. He looked at me, his gaze as if it could see through everything. Everyone thought it was the Crown Prince and the Empress who brought it upon themselves. But we discovered that, behind everything that happened, there was an invisible hand pulling the strings. A hand that can see destiny and can even manipulate it. My hands, inside my sleeves, tightened into fists. I don't know what you're talking about, sir. You do, he smiled. You don't need to be nervous. I'm not here to arrest you. My name is Shi Zhaifei. I am from the Imperial Observatory. The Imperial Observatory, the institution in charge of royal divination and observing celestial phenomena. Legend has it that those within all possess some special abilities. People like us are born burdened by fate. Shi Zhaifei said softly, peering into the secrets of heaven comes with a price. You stirred up such immense karma, yet managed to walk away unscathed. All these years, you've lived so peacefully. I am quite impressed. I said nothing. I came today only to tell you one thing. He pushed the broken hairpin across to me. The ways of heaven are cyclical. Karma follows a cycle. You snipped someone else's thread, and on your own thread, a scar will also remain. From here on out, tread carefully. After he finished speaking, he turned and walked away, just as he had arrived. Without a sound, I sat there for a very, very long time. I picked up the broken hairpin, and my tears finally fell. Mother, I have avenged you. I looked up toward the window. The sunlight was perfect. Children were chasing and playing in the alley. A scene of perfect peace. I extend my hand, staring at my fingertips. My waste energy is not actually useless. Not only can it see destiny, but at the critical moment, it can cut that very thread. I pull back my hand, wipe away my tears, and smile. To hell with fate. To hell with karma. I only know one thing. My life, from this day forward, belongs to me, and that is enough.